So what we're doing is we may lose. There might be mums and dads that come and watch, oh, I want to go watch some wrestling. And what they get is the most cutting edge wrestling in the history of this country. They're not going to like that. Go and watch Dixon's stuff. But eventually, when we've got 10,000 YouTube subscribers within 18 months, well, I bet you a ham sandwich on that, and I'm a vegetarian, that will be our draw. So I do believe that you are going to turn some people off, but the Attitude Era turned a lot of people off, but it drew a lot more. So really, historically, I've studied the last 10, 15 years of British wrestling and American wrestling, so I'm pretty well versed in this field.
Unfortunately, you're not just turning people away from the FWA product, you're turning people away from professional wrestling in general. And that's
what can you base that on?
You yourself said that if someone comes along to watch an FWA product and doesn't like it because it's not their style of wrestling, and you said, well, go along to watch a Dixon show. These people don't differentiate. They see wrestling as wrestling. So they turn up.
But didn't you work for LDN for all that time?
Yes.
So what I'm saying is, so 1 7-minute video that we've done, which had 3 minutes of booing, we're actually educating people to turn their backs on wrestling, right? I don't believe that. I believe if you watch that show, I stand by the fact that is the best top to bottom show that we've done. The Art of War it's equal to The Art of War. It's a superb show. Now, I know Bagger ran that same building and he drew a much bigger crowd during the period that you were involved in it, right? And that show was definitely worse than the one we put on. So technically, we may have lost a few people as a result, but he's exposed double the amount of people, which is embarrassing to say for us, but we're working hard at it, to a shit product. Okay, so what I'm saying, we all have flaws and we all have errors. I believe it was necessary to lay the foundations for the next 12 months of our product, right? So I can justify 3 minutes of booze for 12 months of storylines, and the fact that the front page of WWE's website right now has the chairman, the most famous person in wrestling history, backing up our storyline, we now are on the brink of something really huge. And I believe, and I think the reason we had our falling out was simply because I was daring to do something different, and it created a boom period, which is why we're all sat on this couch now. Now, the boom may have died, but that's because I did my bit. I ran with the baton and I passed it. But it's not my cross to bear, British wrestling. But what I hated was the fact that I was either the best or the worst. When I was just one guy who saw what needed to be done, did it, put my own finances and my own self on the line, became the most hated person in the industry for it. I'm trying the same things, but on a smaller level, and I'm being persecuted probably twice as bad for it, and I'm not making any money from it this time around. That's why I take it that way.
All right, Justin,
okay.
Very quickly, do you want to come back? Or?
No, not a moment.
All right, the reason I ask is because I want to bring in Jetta, who hasn't had a chance to speak here. You've just been listening to that exchange between Justin and Alex. I'm just wondering, I want to ask you the same question, but on a more general level, I suppose. Now, this video and the very complex storyline involving the agenda and the resistance that it's all related to, this is something that I guess typically it's fair to say you might expect to find something this complex in terms of the storytelling might be more suited to a drama series, say, typically than a typical pro wrestling show. So, given that it's something that hasn't really been tried before, I'm just wondering whether you think something like this is suited to a professional wrestling production, or whether it should be left to Heroes and Lost and all those big budget TV dramas.
I think, especially in British wrestling, there's definitely there's a fine line between, maybe putting too much storyline promo stuff on in front of a casual crowd, but then it's all about knowing your market. Like Alex says, All Star, they'll travel the country and they pretty much do the exact same show every single night because it doesn't matter. It's in front of different people every night. I know myself, I've done 2-week loops when I've literally done the exact same match every single night. It doesn't matter, it's different people. Whereas if you're going for a market where you're, running 3 or 4 venues a year, or however many you're running, and you're drawing the same fans back, or those fans are travelling fans, then it makes sense to have something that you can hook them in, Like, what makes them want to come to 5 shows for one company and travel, to Wolverhampton, or, wherever else you run at the top of the country, the bottom of the country? It has to be something that pulls them in. So if you're setting up a storyline that, runs for a year, whether it's unpopular at the start or not, if people are talking about it, they're talking about it. If people are there in the audience on the day, then they go home and they're telling their friends about it, or they're writing about it on the internet, and then that starts other people to look at it, and that gets other people interested. They might think the storyline's rubbish. They may well. But they may borrow a DVD. They may see a match that they like. They may see Doug Williams wrestle, or, you know, your guys that you were talking about earlier, maybe the fans in attendance thought that the match was quite boring, but they might be into that, and they might say, wow, you know, I'm not really interested in the storyline stuff, but the wrestling's hooked me in. So I think, you know, as long as people are talking about it and different people are viewing it, and that's always positive, you know, it's getting your product out there, isn't it? So.
Sorry, can I just make one statement there? I'm not a believer in any publicity is good publicity, and that's what I've just got from what you're saying. I understand the way that the most, you know, successful promoter in the UK, you know, Brian Dixon is. I understand the way he works with putting on the same show in each town again and again and again, 2-week loops. I understand that that's necessary, and why it works. However, it doesn't make it right, and yes, that's just what I wanted to say. It's just I'm not a believer in any publicity is good publicity, and I think that's one of the main things that should be addressed.
I actually do believe that any publicity is good publicity. I think you can look at just like popular culture, just outside of wrestling. You look at somebody like Kerry Katona, absolute mess, but people still buy magazines with her on it. You know, every time she puts on weight, people buy the magazines. She, you know, gets caught on a coke binge, people go buy The Sun, but then 2 minutes later they're buying Close magazine. How I beat my coke addiction.
And she's working it, isn't she?
She's working it. She's making
someone
money
who no
off
one
of
would
it.
care about unless she gets this publicity.
Exactly.
Like British wrestling right now.
I mean,
unfortunately.
I think if you asked like a 14-year-old girl in the street who is Kerry Katona, they'd be able to reel off every crisis she's had in her life, and then they'd say, well, how did she get famous? They wouldn't know what band she was in.
Does that make it right?
Doesn't make it right, but she's making money, she's making a living, and people know who she is. At the end of the day, it is about creating a good product and, you know, having something that you can be proud of, but at the same time it's also about making money and being the biggest product, you know, I think.
It's like a contribution to, and I don't want to overstate this, but in my eyes that's like a contribution to the downfall of society. Once we say, well, it's making money, no, that does not make it right. And
I don't think that was the point, Justin. I think the point that Jet was making was that we were using that as a comparison, but the comparison for pro wrestling is Kerry Katona right now would have no interest from the outside world unless there were things like this to get the interest for her. Now, I completely agree with you. That is the downfall of society. We couldn't be more, you know, our views are not diametrically opposed on this. I'm on your side. But for pro wrestling, particularly in this country, our biggest assets, which are the most dedicated British fans, the smart fans, don't like the FWA product. Why? Because they hate me for one reason. And it's not, they can pick all these. The reason is because I know my place. My place is to work them and provide them with entertainment. And they want to be so smart. They want to be on our level. They don't want to boo anymore. They don't want to cheer, but they don't want to contribute to the whole. So their whole point is what they will do is they don't want to see a company that's going to bring in a bigger audience, because they'll stop being the most important people in the venue and they'll be the people in the corner that everyone goes, go on, have a good time, boo and cheer, you know. Even when we do these round table discussions, when we expose the business, we get heat for exposing the business, yet they think it's all right to sit at a show with a load of casuals and start chanting things that expose the business. So, you know, so we're wrong. So what I'm saying is right now, we need to get those fans into our product because they don't want to watch it, not because it's bad, because we are saying, look, we'll expose everything to you, but then when we're doing a show, have the respect to boo and cheer and go to a show to be entertained. I don't go to the cinema to analyse the acting. That's not my job. I'm not a paid critic, so I go there for entertainment.
If you'd like to purchase any of the DVDs featured in this show, go to www.fwauk.com.
This is the resistance, and we need your help.